Hi there, and welcome to another video tutorial from Cornflower Iris. Today I'm participating in the Color Throwdown challenge number 450 with the colours red, blue, yellow and white. And this is the card I'll be making. Don't forget to check out the Color Throwdown blog, I'll leave a link in the video description below. To begin with, I started out with an A3 piece of 250 GSM white cardstock, which I'm going to make both the envelope, the card blank and all the extra pieces from. So I cut an 8 3/8 of an inch square to make the envelope, and then I'm making nearly an A6 card blank, cutting it to the length, which is half a piece of A4, and then it was 8 1/8 inches wide. I scored it at 4 inches and then chopped off the extra 1/8 of an inch to make a card blank. I used a stitched panel die to cut a stitched rectangle from some more of this black card. Putting it through an angle in the manual die cutting machine really helps it to come out crisply and cleanly. And then I had this Polaroid die, which is from Xcut. It's from a set with lots of words. So I'm going back a second time with hello, that's going to cut out. And then I found this camera die. This is another Xcut mini die. And then I embossed this using a tan embossing mat. This just means all the details really pop. I'm using this embossing folder. It's a Teresa Collins embossing folder. Details will be over my blog, and I'm embossing that stitch panel that I cut, and you can see it's a really lovely camera detail design. I'm being careful here, I'm popping everything out of the camera die, but I'm keeping all those little pieces because I'm going to do some paper piecing at the end. So I couldn't decide on the layout, but that's okay. So the front of the card I treated with an anti-static bag. And then I'm using a stamp set I've used before in another video. This came free with an issue of Creative Stamping magazine. I'm using VersaMark ink to stamp around the edges, and this is going to form a kind of background because the panel's quite a lot smaller than the card front. So I'm using a starfish stamp, and then I had this gorgeous embossing powder from Stampendous. It's one of their Pearlustres, and it's in the colour Carnelian. So this leaves a really lovely pearlescent, shiny finish. So not only is it glossy, but it also has this lovely kind of pearlescent finish. So you can see the stars just come out. The only place I touched was in the middle, so I'm careful to pour the powder away from this so that we don't get any extra residue there. And then this has gone a little lumpy because I think I've had it quite a while and maybe some moisture got in the jar, but it still works absolutely fine. Using some tweezers to hold the corner of the cardstock. This means I'm unlikely to burn my fingers, and then I'm using a heat tool to just melt the powder. So this is magic. As you watch it melt, it goes really shiny and really glimmery. It's a gorgeous process to watch. I can't get enough of it even after all these years. So once that is done, you've got a lovely professional looking card front. To finish off the embossed panel, I felt you couldn't really see the detailing just on the white, so I wanted to bring out the cameras. I'm using some brush pens. These are from Berol. They're the kind you'd find in classrooms all over the UK, but I got some recently to do some brush calligraphy. They're not obviously the same kind of brush pen nib as you'll get on the Japanese calligraphy pens, but they do a fairly good job, and they give a nice even laydown of colour, and I was able to really pick out the design details without any bleeding into the paper, which you might get from alcohol markers in this kind of cardstock. So I went over in this blue colour, one of the cameras, and then I went over the ones next to it in yellow, and then I just filled out that design really, so there's kind of diagonal lines of blue and yellow, which matches the colour scheme perfectly. And it really has a kind of pop art finish. I really love the finish effect. And it looks gorgeous next to the red on the panel. So for the Polaroid, I decided it needed more contrast on the hello, so I stuck some Scotch Magic tape over the back, and then I'm taking all those little pieces out of the die, putting it on some scrap paper and brushing on some red colour with a red brush pen. This is then going to be for some paper piecing. I'm sorry I did this last bit off camera, but I placed everything back inside the Polaroid, and it gives a really lovely finish. I'm using red liner tape that I cut in half, just around the outside edges, and I put a piece of acetate on top. And this is going to form the little window for a tiny shaker element. I also put some foam tape on the back that I had to cut into quarters to fit around the tiny edging. And I'm using some blue and white sequins that I got in a pack from the pound shop. I'm just taking out anything that looks kind of greeny or doesn't really match this colour scheme, taking out some hearts, and I just left one star in there and some round elements. It's easier of course if you put it on the card first, but I wasn't sure where I was going to put the element. So I put them all towards the top and then I'm going to put it directly in the middle of the card. It's also better if you try and even them out first. I put them all in a pile and then had to work at it a little to make them come loose, but they're nice and loose in the end. And then I just stuck the front panel down with some tape runner because I didn't want it too bulky. And that's the card front done. So for the inside we have that camera die cut. I coloured this in yellow because it's easier, it's the most forgiving colour to work with out of the water-based markers. And I just coloured in the whole base in this yellow colour. For the elements that came out of it, I used the blue colour, and this was kind of tricky because some of these elements are absolutely tiny, but with a bit of patience and care, you can colour them all in quite easily. I really like to finish off the inside of the cards with an element that's also on the front of the cards. So for all, this camera has a slightly different design than the cameras on the front. It really ties everything together. And I'm using yellow and blue here, and I'll be using red for the sentiment in the middle too. I placed some scotch tape on the back, and it's the same deal as with the hello on the front. So I'm just placing the items back where they should be, and they're sticking to that tape. It's a very easy technique really, but it's very effective. So now all these pieces are in place, I'm using some tape runner just to attach that to the bottom corner of the card. And then I used the red brush pen to do some calligraphy and wrote smile with an exclamation mark. This is one of those just because cards. And it's really summery and bright, and hopefully will put a smile on somebody's face. So now for that square piece of cardstock we cut at the beginning, I'm scoring on a 123 punch board to make a box envelope for this card. So I'm rounding all the corners. Apologies for my voice, I have a bit of a cold. And then I'm making sure to burnish these lines really well. So I'm going to emboss this with the embossing folder to make it tie up with the front of the card. So I don't want these lines to become unembossed, if you see what I mean, when they go through the die cutting machine. So I lined it up carefully in the folder to make sure it didn't look like it was quite odd. It kind of matched up nicely. There was a line of cameras just on the edge, on the top and on the bottom. And once this is done, it's not particularly striking, and I didn't really fancy spending ages going around and colouring all the individual elements, although that would have been much more striking than the final effect here. So what I did was use some distress inks. So I used Fired Brick and Blueprint Sketch, and I went over the two long flaps with Fired Brick, and the middle and the two short flaps with Blueprint Sketch. And I went on with quite a heavy coat, but in real life this makes the camera stand out more, and it does tie in with the colour scheme for the inside. So I'm putting the box together with red liner tape, and then I'm using a glue dot that I stuck my finger over a few times to fasten everything together. And that's the card for today. I hope you enjoyed this and got inspired. Don't forget to check out the Color Throwdown blog, and please, if you like the video, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.